I'd like to welcome everyone to the Canadian Kennel Club 2020 AGM. We are glad you can join us today. My name is Joan Bennett and I represent Zone 11, BC Southwest, and I am chair of the board. Before we get started, I will review a few technical considerations. The annual general meeting, of which I'll call AGM from here on in, will last about 2.5 hours, and we will take a brief break about halfway through. We are pleased to offer our French-speaking members simultaneous interpretation. To listen to the meeting in French, please use the globe icon. It's a feature on the Zoom platform, and choose either French or English. Please note that the meeting is being recorded. If you haven't already done so, you are encouraged to download the agenda and supporting material in your language of choice from the CKC website. As the meeting slides will proceed in English, members using the interpretation are also encouraged to download a French version on the CKC website to follow along in real time. All of those mentioned documents can be found on the online portal under Resources, AGM Documents, Annual Reports, and Audited Financial Statements. Now let's get started, and I will call the meeting to order and review the agenda. Introductions, followed by opening remarks by the chair, the honorary chair, and the honorary veterinarian. Minutes of the 2019 annual general meeting, correspondence, presentation of the 2019 audited financial statements, and then the reports. My report as chair, the ED's report, and the annual reports of committees and councils, followed by unfinished business, new business, at which time the floor will be open to the members, closing remarks, and adjournment. I would like to ask the board members to introduce themselves, starting with Zone 11. They will tell you which zone they represent and what committees and councils they serve on. Lendra, starting with you.
I'm Lendra Barker. I'm the director for Zone 1, which is Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and Labrador. I'll give you a little synopsis of what committees and councils I'm involved in. I am the chair of the Board Orientation and Education Committee, also the chair of the Legislation Committee, and I was on a select committee for the AGM planning. I was chair. We were to have the AGM in Newfoundland, and once we canceled that, Peter Labenthal and I shared chair duties for that committee. I also serve as the chair of the Herding Field Trial Council and the Tracking Test Council. I am chair of that as well. And over the last 6 months, I've been involved in an unofficial committee to work on a trick dog program. So that is it, and I'd just like to welcome you to our first virtual annual general meeting.
Thank you. Paul?
My name is Paul Oslodge. I am the board member for Zone 2, which is New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island. I would like to welcome everybody to the annual general meeting. I am the chair of the Beagle and Basset Hound Field Trial Council. I am the chair of the Obedience Council and the chair of the Working Certificate Test Council.
Thank you. Linda?
Good afternoon, everyone. Bon après-midi à tout le monde. I will say a few words in French and then a few words in English out of respect for my fellow francophone members. Ça m'a fait grand plaisir de représenter la zone 3 pour un deuxième mandat qui se terminera dans quelques mois, c'est-à-dire toute la province de Québec. Et je vais maintenant vous énumérer les comités et les conseils sur lesquels j'ai été impliquée dans les 2 dernières années. So it was my great pleasure to represent the province of Quebec for a last term on the board. And I will now list the few committees and council I'm involved with. Don't laugh, Joan. So I'm the chair of the Agility Council, chair of the newly formed CGN Council. I am a member of the Legislation Committee, board liaison for the Responsible Dog Owner. No, I'm not the board liaison, sorry. I'm a member of the Responsible Dog Owner Committee. I'm a board liaison for the Event Officiating Committee. I am chair of the board liaison for the Versatility Program Ad Hoc Committee. And it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to this historical AGM, the very first we are holding live. Welcome to the year 2020.
Thank you. Zone 4.
Hi, I'm Richard Paquette, and I'm the director for Untitled. which does from the Greater Toronto Region to the Manitoba border. I'd like to welcome everyone to our historic AGM, where all of you have had an opportunity to participate, and I hope you do enjoy the information that you are going to receive today. I am the chair of the Junior Kennel Club Council, and that is my passion. I'm also a member of the Strategic Planning Committee. I'm on the Executive Director's Performance and Review Committee. I am the chair of the Brachiocephalic Advocacy Committee. I am on the Breeder Relations Committee as a board liaison. I also serve on the Communications Committee, and somewhat outside of the CKC, I am a board member of the Canadian Kennel Club Foundation, and I serve as the Canadian Kennel Club Foundation president. Welcome.
Zone 6.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Paul Ford, representing Ontario West, essentially all of southwestern Ontario. I've had the pleasure of serving the members of Zone 6 for about 4 years. I serve as the board liaison to the Genetics and Medical Committee and the Responsible Dog Ownership Committee. As a member of the Strategic Planning Committee, as the chair of the Scent Detection Council, chair of the Non-Standard Breed Colors Ad Hoc Committee, as a member of the International Working Group on Extremes of Conformation in Dogs through the International Partnership for Dogs, and as a member of a variety of other official and unofficial committees. I would like to take the time here to briefly acknowledge one important group of individuals, and that is the members of Zone 6 representing our zone on all of the shows and trials councils, and the members from our zone who sit on various CKC committees. These are all volunteers working hard on our behalf in our zone and on behalf of all of the members of the CKC, and it is the commitment and dedication of these members that allows us in the organization to serve us all in all the ways that we interact with the CKC. Thank you for your service, and thank you all for attending the first virtual AGM.
Thank you. Zone 7.
Good morning and welcome to one and all. Thank you very much for your time today to attend the AGM. My name is Peter Leventhal-Wolfish. I represent all the members in Zone 7, which is essentially the GTA all the way around to the Golden Horseshoe. In addition to my efforts and time on the board, I also sit as the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee. I sit as the chair of the former ITFU Steering Committee. I am the chair of the newly formed IT Advisory Committee. I serve as the board liaison for the Breed Standards Committee, and I too am a board member of the CKCF. And again, I thank those for attending. Wonderful to have you join our first virtual AGM.
Zone 8.
Hi, my name is Corrine Walker. I'm the representative for Zone 8. I am a member of the Legislation Committee, the Board Orientation and Education Committee. I am the board liaison for the Rules of Eligibility Committee, and I was the chair of the 2019 AGM Committee. I'd like to thank all the Manitobans that sat on my committees and councils that helped us get our job done over the last 3 years. And thank all you guys for attending this first virtual meeting.
Thank you. Zone 9.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Gilmore. I'm the director for Zone 9, Saskatchewan. I chair the Draft Dog Test Council and the Retriever Hunt Test Council. I've been on the board for 6 years now, and by the looks of things, I'm going to be here for at least another 3. So I look forward to working with everybody, and I would like to thank everybody in my zone that has supported me through all of this. And it is great to see so many people attending this AGM in a virtual state for the first time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Zone 10.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Derrick, and I represent Zone 10, which is Alberta, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. And I'm really pleased to see so many people out today. I do represent the CKC on the Confirmation Council, Pointing Breeds Field Trials, and the Retriever Field Trial Council. And I would like to thank everybody that has been involved in my zone as committee or council chairs, and any of the volunteers that have helped me through these 6 years that I've been on the board. Thank you.
I'll skip myself at 11 and I'll go to Lynn next. Lynn Bruce, Zone 12.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Great to see everybody here. I'm honored to serve our Zone 12 members for the past term, and thank you for your support in doing all that. I am the board liaison for the Club Recognition Committee. I am chair of the Sprinter and CAP Committee. I am chair of the Lure Coursing Committee, and I'm a member of the Canadian Kennel Club, a Canadian Kennel Club Foundation, and chair of its Grants Committee.
Thank you very much. Now going back, I previously stated, my name is Joan Bennett. I represent BC Southwest, chair of the board, and as such, I'm ex officio on any and all committees and councils, and I do sit in on some of them. So welcome everybody, and I'd like to thank all of our volunteers. No matter how much you do, how little you do, we do appreciate it. And I just want to bring up one thing. Some of you may have noticed that some of us don't have the background, the CKC background, and it's strictly because of either computer issues or their home setting. A certain amount of lighting and stuff, like I have all indirect lighting, and it makes it difficult, you wouldn't see. Anyway, it's not that some people are trying to stand out specifically, it's just a matter of that's the way it is. Before we move forward to management, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that our Zone 5 Director, Thomas Nesbitt, will not be with us today. I will now introduce Lance Novak, the Executive Director, and turn the meeting over to him to introduce his staff. Lance?
Thank you, Joan, and good morning, good afternoon, as it may be, and extended thanks as well from myself for the tremendous participation, and welcome to our first virtual meeting. I will take a slightly different approach and offer an opportunity for the staff present for this AGM to say hello and put a face to the name. As I go through the list, you will be familiar with a lot of the names. You will be familiar with many of the titles, but also as I go through the list, there will be some new faces that you may not have been introduced in the past. And there will also be some new titles assigned to the introductions. This is related to a reorganization of skills across the organization aligned to our 3-year strategic plan that occurred earlier this year. And I'll provide some further details on that strategic plan when I have an opportunity to offer some comments later today. So first I'd like to introduce Leela Bahari, who is familiar to many and has a new title, which is Registrar. And with Leela's new portfolio, she oversees a portfolio that is related to our core purpose as the prime registry of purebred dogs in Canada. She oversees everything that is all registration, whether it be bylaws, policies, procedures, and every form of compliance related to the Animal Pedigree Act. And she also has a portfolio that oversees strategic initiatives related to this responsibility. Good morning, Leela.
Morning, everyone, and welcome to our CKC virtual meeting of 2020.
Thank you, Leela. Next is Diane Draper, another familiar face and name, and Diane is our manager of regulatory. Good morning, Diane.
Welcome, everyone, to the virtual 2020 annual general meeting.
Thank you, Diane. Sherry Weiss is next. Sherry also has a new title aligned to the strategic plan and the reorganization, and she is our general manager. Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are right now. Welcome to our first virtual AGM meeting, and it's great to see so many people, so many of our members attending today. Thank you.
Sherry. Next is Andrew McAllister, our manager of e-business. Andrew will be presenting later as part of my report. Good morning, Andrew.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the AGM.
Thanks, Andrew. Next is Bernardita, or Bernie Fernandez, which is a new face to CKC. Bernie is our controller and has been with us several weeks or a few months since the summer of this year, and we're very happy to have her. Welcome, Bernie. I know I saw her.
Oh, I saw her earlier.
Okay, welcome. I'm sure she'll join us again. Next is Jacqueline, or Jackie Boychuk. She has been with CKC for a while, but has adopted a new role recently as our manager of marketing and communications. She will also be assisting Tara behind the scenes today with the moderation activities. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Jackie. Tara Merriman, who you cannot see probably, but you have certainly heard her voice, is also in the role of manager of HR and governance. And she will also be working behind the scenes to help support the facilitation moderation of the AGM. Good morning, Tara.
Good morning, everyone. Hello to the East Coast and the West Coast. Thank you for joining us today.
What about everybody in between? Next is a new face that I saw earlier, and I think she's still on, is Sarah McDowell. Sarah is not based at CKC, but she has a revised portfolio that includes government and external relations, and I will have an opportunity to expand a little bit on that in my comments later in the AGM. Are you there, Sarah?
I am here. Good morning, good day, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first virtual AGM. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you all for attending.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. And certainly not last but not least is Annette Maggs, who is serving as our recording secretary for this event. Good morning, Annette.
Good morning, everyone.
Great. That is my full set of introductions. Thank you, Joan.
Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to the recognition of members who have passed away since the last AGM. Thank you. Our deepest condolences go out to the families and friends of members of our community we have lost since our last annual general meeting. May I have a moment of silence in their memory. Thank you very much. We will now move on to my opening remarks, which will be brief. But before, I'm going to go a little off record to start out with, because I'd like you all to join with me in keeping in your hearts and minds and prayers those people who have lost their lives, those people who are missing, the many, many first responders, including 20,000 firefighters, and all of the people in the Western United States by the thousands that are having to flee their homes. We do keep you in our hearts. It's not a pretty scene. We all see it. And right now my eyes are stinging because I have smoke outside my window. Okay, doing this AGM virtually is a first, so please bear with us if something unfortunate or unforeseen should happen. Keep your fingers crossed. Usually we are socializing with you all in one meeting room. But this time, however, we come to you from 12 different municipalities, ranging from Nova Scotia to Vancouver. I would like to personally thank all those who have made this possible. No small feat. Thank you very much. Each year, a member of CKC is appointed as honorary chair. I am pleased to introduce to you Virginia Line, who served as our honorary chair for the year 2019. Just a little bit of background. I have known Ginny personally for more years than either of us would care to admit. If I told you, I'd have to provide a lie saying we met in the neonatal nursery, despite the fact we were born in different parts of the world. Suffice it to say, we've known each other since the last century. Ginny, I turn it over to you.
Good morning. Greetings to the chair, members of the board, executive director, the staff, and the CKC members. I am indeed proud to have had the occasion to serve as the honorary chair of the CKC for 2019. Though it does seem somewhat odd making these remarks in September of 2020. What a strange ended year we are experiencing. I appreciate having had the opportunity to represent, to the best of my ability, the CKC in 2019. I tried hard to be accessible and active in the year as I supported purebred dogs and the activities of our kennel club. We are moving to a different way of involving fanciers in our sport. Socially distant exhibitors, masks, and super cleaning, all that we touch. Some shows have been able to return in Ontario and Quebec, but so far it is impossible in BC to consider shows our 50-person limit on gatherings. We are going to have to rethink how we hold our shows and how we interact with each other. I am hearing some of our exhibitors say they have moved on to other interests, which bothers me. And some of our judges are considering either retiring or cutting back on the shows that they attend. Meanwhile, the really important change that I see is the demand for purebred puppies. This may be the lifeline for shows if it can bring us back to judging breeding stock and breeders making the effort to involve their new owners in shows and performance events. I hope that we will see many class animals being shown that have been growing up just waiting for the shows to return. This is the year of elections for the board, and there is a healthy competition in many of the zones. I think this is positive, and I do hope that everyone gets out to vote after careful consideration of who will best represent the needs of the Canadian Kennel Club in these challenging times. Ask careful questions and consider your choices, and I wish the incoming board well. I would like to extend every best wishes to the honorary chair for 2020, Thora Brown. You are a truly deserving representative of our Kennel Club. Thank you all. Have a good year.
Thank you so much, Ginny, for serving as our 2019 honorary chair. The honorary veterinarian will have some recorded remarks. Every year, the CKC appoints an honorary veterinarian. In years ending in odd numbers, the position rotates between the 5 Canadian veterinary colleges. And in the alternative years, veterinarians are elected through the nomination process. We are pleased that Dr. Greg Keefe, Dean of the Faculty of Veterinary Medicine, University of Prince Edward Island, served as the honorary veterinarian.
Hello, my name is Dr. Greg Keefe. I'm the Dean here at the Atlantic Veterinary College at the University of Prince Edward Island, located in beautiful Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. I brought along Winston. Winston is a 5-year-old standard poodle golden retriever and a huge part of our household, particularly since our children have all recently left the nest. Winston's a big part of the physical and mental well-being of my wife and I, particularly during these trying times. In addition to being the Dean of Veterinary Medicine here at ABC, I'm also the president of an organization called the Dean's Council Agriculture, Food, and Veterinary Medicine. That organization includes the 8 faculties of agriculture and 5 veterinary colleges here in Canada. I know I can speak for all the veterinary deans when I congratulate this CKC and its members on their promotion of responsible dog breeding and pet ownership. Dogs like Winston here are very important to both of our professions and also to society in general. The partnership between dog breeders and veterinarians is critical in ensuring that we have healthy dog populations and that they are well cared for. Best wishes to the Canadian Kennel Club on a successful annual general meeting. Thank you.
We sincerely thank Jenny Line and Dr. O'Keefe for serving our community. Without you, we couldn't do it. Thank you. These certificates will be presented to both of our honorary positions. Okay, I'm pleased to announce that in June, the board appointed Thora Brown, Ginny already preempted me here, of Almonte, Ontario, to serve as the 2020 CKC Honorary Chair, and Dr. Eric Carnegie from Halifax to serve as the 2020 CKC Honorary Veterinarian. Thank you so much for stepping up to the plate. Okay, our next item on the agenda are the minutes from the 2019 Annual General Meeting. We have to approve these each year, and they are posted on the CKC website, and no notice of errors or omissions was received. The items raised by members at that meeting were subsequently reviewed and addressed by the board, and a report has been attached as an addendum to the minutes. Then the following motion has therefore been submitted. It has been moved by Corinne Walker, seconded by Lendra Barker, that the minutes of the 2019 AGM held June 1st in Winnipeg, Manitoba be adopted. Please vote on the motion. In order to vote, all members in good standing and who have completed 1 year of continuous membership as of January 1st, 2020 are eligible to vote. Tara will announce the results. There will be a poll put up on your screen. We don't have it, board members. All those in favor, board members?
Madam Chair, this is Tara. We do have the motion passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will go on to the next item, which is correspondence. There is no correspondence to be presented to the meeting. So we will now go to presentation of the 2019 audited financial statements. Marcus Sconsi, BDO, it will be presenting the 2019 audited financial statements. And following that, he will take questions. Marcus, I turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Okay, so my name is Marcus Sconsi. As I was introduced, I am a partner with BDO Canada. We are the auditors of the Canadian Kennel Club, and I'm going to present to you the December 31st, 2019 audited financial statements. I'll go through them at a high level and touch upon some of the key items in the statements, and I will do my best to avoid accounting terminology, or where I have to use it, I will do my best to explain in simple terms what I'm discussing. So with that, I am going to go to the independent auditor's report, which is the most important part of these financial statements. This is the report that BDO attaches and that I have signed, which indicates that we have completed another successful audit. This is a clean or unmodified audit opinion, which means that our audit was conducted as planned. We didn't encounter any significant issues, and therefore we've signed off the audited financial statements that they fairly present the results of the Canadian Kennel Club for the 2019 fiscal year. I just wanted to say before moving on from this page that we couldn't have done this without the assistance and the help of CKC management, who obviously are a great support system for the auditors through the process. So I wanted to just say a sincere thank you to CKC management for all of their help during the process. And just to quickly touch upon the report, as I just said about accounting terminology, these 2 pages are full of that. I just want to touch upon, I've talked about the opinion, how we have an unmodified opinion. This report also talks about the various responsibilities of an auditor versus those of management and those charged with governance. So those charged with governance refers to the board and the audit committee, which is a subcommittee of the board. And the responsibilities, these are management's financial statements. We are responsible as the auditors for auditing them. And then those charged with governance, i.e. the board, is responsible for fulfilling a governance role over the financial statements. So those distinctions are very important. The second page of our report here just talks to some of the specific things that we do as part of the audit process, just to ensure that there's a general understanding from the public as to what an audit does and what it does not do. And as you can see, the statements were approved by the board on March 14th and signed by BDO Canada on the same date. So I will move now to the statement of financial position, which is the assets and liabilities of the CKC on December 31st, 2019. So that's an important distinction, is that this represents a snapshot in time, whereas the next page that I'm going to talk to is results for the full year. So I'm going to go over some of the key variances. In other words, items that change by a significant dollar value, either up or down from the 2019 comparative column that you see here, just to explain why there were some significant financial changes. The first two items I'm actually going to defer. Cash and short-term investments, they do go hand in hand, and there's actually a statement of cash flows, which I will get to in a few moments, that will detail why those two items have both decreased, and I'll talk to those in more detail in a few moments. The only other item on the top section that I wanted to talk to is this prepaid expenses, which has gone up by about $37,000. And that's a result of an IT support contract that was paid in advance that spanned from December to May. And you would expense that month by month as time goes on. And that the unexpensed portion sits in prepaids. And there was no similar amount in 2018. Going down below, capital and intangible assets. So these are items that CKC purchases that have a useful life of beyond a year. So this is things like equipment. Intangible assets encompasses software and things of that nature. And the reason that you see such a significant increase of about $360,000 here is due to the IT for You system, which was largely completed in 2019 and went live, all with the exception of the shows and trials module. And obviously, an undertaking like this requires a significant capital investment, and $360,000 was this year's capital investment, net of some of the depreciation for that has been recorded during the year. So that first subtotal, the 4.85 million versus the 5.4 million, is the total assets of CKC as at December 31st, 2019 in comparison to 2018. Going down into the next section, liabilities and net assets. So assets are, as I talked to before, are items that CKC holds that have future value to us. Liabilities are items that we owe other people for goods or services that they have provided to us. You can see accounts payable. I think that's a term we're all familiar with. The second item down, deferred revenue, has had a significant decline from $650,000 to $212,000, or about $440,000. The reason for this is this relates to the IT for You system and how that caused a change in the way memberships are renewed. So deferred revenue represents items, it represents monies that people have provided to CKC for services yet to be provided. Under the old APPX system, memberships were automatically renewed towards the end of the year, and then any renewals were put into deferred revenue. In the new IT for You system, it is up to the members to go in and renew their own membership. And obviously, since that's not happening in one big batch, and some of it does happen in the first part of, in this case, 2020, there's a significant decrease in deferred revenue. So we would expect going forward that that decreased amount would be consistent with future years, and that we won't see large amounts in the $650,000 range going forward. The next section down below is the net assets. The net assets, what this represents is the accumulation of profit in the Canadian Kennel Club, so the difference between revenues and expenses since the inception of CKC. So you can see there's a very healthy $3.696 million of net assets. Those are broken down into a few categories, and similar to the cash flows, there is a unique statement for the net assets, so I will go through those in a few moments when I get to that statement. So with that, I will move on to the statement of operations. So this represents the various sources of revenue and the various expenditures that were brought in and incurred by CKC for the year ended December 31st, 2019. There's been a few significant changes, which I'll go over. The first being registration revenue, which you'll see is down by about 538,000 from 3.1 to 2.597 million dollars. It's a fairly significant change. The reason for that is again pertaining to the IT for You system implementation, and there was a backlog of registrations that the Kennel Club was working on processing, and they weren't able to get them all processed by December 31st. So what this means is it's just a temporary blip based on timing, and we'd actually expect to see in 2020 that registration revenue goes up because the backlog will be processed, and then in addition there'll be the regular registrations going through. So that's just a temporary item that should work itself out in 2020. So in total, revenues are down by about 496,000 from 6.1 million to 5.6 million, and that really is entirely due to that registration backlog. Then down below, we have the expenses. There are total expenses of 5.89 versus 5.52 million, which is an increase of about 373,000. For the most part, these increases are minor in the line items that you see here. A couple that I will talk to, the third line down, IT support services, is up by about 117,000. That relates to the new IT for You system as well as the new website, and there was some IT support that went along with both of those items, which caused an increase this year. And then if you go down a couple lines below that, you see equipment is down from 263 to 191, so that's about a $75,000 decrease. There was a couple of equipment leases that had expired partway through the year, and new equipment was not required, so there was no replacement leases, and that results in the decrease there. Overall, there's a lot of minor differences, both ups and downs within the expenses. At the end of the day, the overall increase is $373,000. So the bottom line on that statement, there was a deficiency of revenues over expenses of about 230,000. That means that revenues that were brought in were less than the expenditures incurred by $230,000, which may cause concern for some, but if I would point you back to that backlog of registration revenue, just looking at that number in itself, if those were to have been processed, it would have taken that loss into an income position. So really no need for any concern there. And that compares to the 638,000 last year. And again, the reason why that variance is so large, close to $900,000, is due to that registration backlog. So on to the next page. This is the statement of changes in net assets. So this goes through the changes in, as I mentioned earlier, the historical accumulation of revenues over expenses, which totals the 3.696 million that you see in the rightmost column. There's a bunch of different funds within the net assets. And the first on the left-hand side is invested in capital assets. What that is it is the funds of CKC's own money that you have reinvested in capital assets. So again, these are items like office equipment, furniture, and the most significant being the IT for You system. Then if you go over a couple, you'll see that the third column relates to that. It's an IT fund that was set up by the board in order to make sure that there was an appropriate amount of money set aside to fund the IT for You project. Since that is largely complete by year end, that fund has been fully relieved and it is down to zero, as you see right here. So there's no longer a fund balance there. And there's a couple of other minor funds, which I won't go through. The second from the right, the unrestricted. So there's $2.3 million, which is unrestricted. In other words, it is money that is available to CKC to spend and carries no restrictions. And I think it's worth noting in times like these, especially in the COVID-19 pandemic, how important it is to have excess funds like this set aside. Not all organizations are as fortunate as CKC is to have money like this available in the event that certain revenue streams dry up and there's not sufficient revenues to cover the expenses. Not that I'm saying that is the case with CKC, but it's always great to have those funds available if needed. On to the next page, the statement of cash flows. This is a very important page because I'm sure you've all heard the term cash is king. Cash is extremely important. And if all of your assets are tied up, then you don't have the cash to invest when investment is needed. There's a few lines that I want to draw your attention to. The first is this first subtotal down here, which is your cash generated from operations. You'll see that that's a negative 443 compared to about positive 1.1 million from the prior year. The reason for that major swing is because of the loss of 230,000, which is the top number, compared to having net income of 638,000 in the prior year. That is the biggest factor in the cash that is available to operations. And then you can see just the various changes in some of the balance sheet items dictate whether or not cash was generated or used during the year. In the grand scheme, there was $443,000 cash that was required to fund operations. So now if we go down below, you can see some of the investing activities that happened during the year. The first being short-term investments of $516,000 were sold during the year. That helped to fund some of the cash that was required for operations above, and it also helped to fund the number you see below, the $453,000 of capital and intangible asset purchases, which is largely comprised of the IT for You project and the significant capital requirements in order to complete that system and have it go live during the year. So overall, we've seen a decrease in cash of about 382,000 this year compared to last year, where we had an increase in cash of about 263,000, which brings us to a net cash position at the end of the year of 240,000 compared to 622,000 in the prior year. But I should also point out that if you go back to the balance sheet, you'll notice there's short-term investments of 2.89 million, which means really if you look at those together, there is about $3.1 million of cash and cash equivalents available to the CKC right now in order to fund operations and any capital or other investments required going forward. So that is an extremely healthy cash position, and that is something that the CKC should be very proud of, that you have that available at your disposal. So the subsequent pages of the statements, what these are, the first note here, these are called notes to the financial statements. The first note here summarizes the significant accounting policies. So what this does is it explains how certain assets, liabilities, revenues, and expenses are recorded in the statements that I just went through. And the reason that this is required is because in certain instances, there are choices. There are different ways that you can record transactions. So these spell out to a user of the statements why or which choices were made and why those choices were made. I'm not going to go through those individually, but the revenue recognition being a good example is a nice summary of the different revenue streams and when we record the revenue in each of those streams. So you can see here, as we go through these notes, we then get to note 2. The notes from 2 onwards, what they do is they further explain items that appear in the balance sheet or the statement of operations, so that you have additional information to help understand the various balances in the financial statements. So you can see here as an example, the capital and intangible assets note. This summarizes the capital and intangible assets by type. And I've mentioned a few times the IT for You system. This is listed under intangible assets as the ERP system, which you can see there's been a total spend of about 1.25 million. And given that it just went live towards the end of the year, there's only been a small portion of depreciation. Amortization is another term for depreciation, as you depreciate an asset over its life. So you can see the significant spend that the CKC has incurred for the IT4U system. The remainder of these notes just again further explain additional items in the statements. As you can see, as I scroll through them, they provide some additional details to further explain other amounts. I'm not going to go through them in detail, but that concludes the presentation of the statements, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has at this time.
Tara will monitor the questions for you. So between Marcus and Lance, we will get a response. Tara, I turn it over to you.
Our first question is from a French member, and we will hand this over to the interpreters. Marcus, were you able to hear the question in English?
I was not, no.
I can hear the interpreter if that helps, and if it's repeated, I could relay it to Marcus.
That would be great, Lance, because I can't seem to find the button.
The observation was there was a $150,000 increase or 30% related to the IT system. And I believe that the question was, what are we anticipating as additional expenses in 2020? I don't think Marcus is able to answer that question, but I will offer the comment that for all intents and purposes, the project in itself is finished and paid for in terms of its development phases. We are building a budget for, oh, I'm sorry, it was 2020, not 2020, 21. I may have to turn it to Bernie or Andrew for any, I do have a listing here, but basically what is expected to be in the 2020 financial statements along the same lines of an IT expense.
And Lance, are we talking about the project itself? So from a project perspective, we are fully invoiced, so there's no new expenses, but we are holding on to some invoices with Pavliks pending completion. So we're holding back some money, but we've been fully invoiced. And Bernie might have the exact amount handy.
So the short answer to the question is nothing is spilling over into our 2020 financials in terms of direct cost to the IT project. I think that answers the question as I understood it.
Thank you, Lance. The next question is from Lisbeth Plant. Do I understand it correctly that Apex owes money to CKC? Does Apex have these monies available?
Okay, so for that question, I believe it's probably coming from this note here, which does have some amounts in it. So in simple terms, the answer to that question is technically yes, but no in terms of the impact on CKC's financial statements. So there was, if you can see right here, it says as of December 31st, the financial position of Apex includes liabilities of 837. Those liabilities are owed to CKC. They were written off in CKC a number of years ago, so there is no longer any asset that represents monies receivable from Apex Publishing.
Thank you, Marcus. Our next question is from Bell Halls. Was there an estimated backlog of revenue for registrations, as the change in revenue seems quite significant over 2018?
I believe I explained that, unless I misunderstood the question when going through the statement of operations here. But yes, this $3.1 million registration revenue, which went down to 2.6 in the current year, was the result of a backlog when the new system was implemented. So there was a backlog, yes, and it is the reason for the significant decrease.
Thank you, Marcus. Our next question comes from Cassandra Roback. What was the total cost to date on the IT system?
The total cost to date on the IT system, if we go to note number 3 here, would be this $1.25 million. I believe that is entirely the IT4U system without seeing the details. If not, the majority of it is. So that is the total cost.
Thank you, Marcus. That ends the questions from the attendees at the moment.
Thank you very much. I just want to emphasize something. The audit financial statements are approved by the board and are received by the members at the AGM. So no motion is required to pass them. I would really like to thank Marcus for his presentation. It's been very, very helpful. Thank you so much, Marcus.
You're very welcome.
We will now take a 10-minute break. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're ready to start again. I will call the meeting back to order and welcome anyone who may have just joined. I have a message here from one of my fellow board members. These financials are for 2019 only, 2019. So the figures like for IT for you are for 2019. Okay. And we'll now go to reports. I'll give my chair's report. What can I say about 2019? Perhaps that it was the last normal year and could be for several years to come. Or perhaps that it was the year that after more than 30 years of service, APPX crashed and had to be laid to rest. And luckily, we didn't lose information. Yes, this is the AGM for 2019 activities, not 2020. Some of our milestones were as follows. Members of 3 of the independent standing committees were appointed: the Audit Committee, the Discipline Committee, and the Registration Committee. The Strategic Planning Committee drafted a new 3-year strategic plan, which was accepted by the board in December. This sets the direction of the club. The executive director will be going through in his report. Representatives interacted internationally, and we were able to share a myriad of issues with foreign kennel clubs. The canine world is truly a global community. As you're aware, CKC is a member of the International Partnership for Dogs. And as such, Dr. Paul Eckford attended the International Dog Health Workshop in Windsor, England in the spring of 2019. And in the early summer, the executive director, Lance Novak, and I represented the CKC at the International Congress of Kennel Clubs in Stockholm. In June, our own Sarah McDowell was invited to attend the American Kennel Club Government Relations Conference in Washington, D.C., where she was very well received. The year ended with Lance and me attending the AKC National Championship Show in Orlando, where we had discussions with a number of the AKC management team members. At the end of May, CKC had a booth at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Quebec City. 2019 saw the launch of scent detection, and it certainly took off, as most of us have been aware. Also launched was the therapy dog title recognition, and the board approved the trick dog title recognition program. Several select committees were established, including Brachycephalic Breeds Advocacy Ad Hoc Committee, Non-Standard Colors Ad Hoc Committee to review the registration options for breeds with colors not in breed standards, and the Versatility Titles Committee. Between chairing committees and being board liaison to council, the board members were kept busy, as well as staff liaisons to the committees and councils. A special thank you to the volunteers who serve on the various committees and councils. We couldn't do it without you. The current term for this board is drawing to an end, and I'd like to thank them for their hard work and dedication over the past 3 years. And would be remiss if I didn't thank the CKC staff at all levels who have been there for us. I now hand it over to our Executive Director, Lance Novak, to present his report. Lance, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Joan. I'm going to start off by saying that I've had the good fortune over the past several years to present annual updates on the operations of CKC, and mostly and consistently with strong financial results, growth, and progress against our goals and objectives. And as Joan said, we were certainly headed down that path in 2019 until a lot of unpredicted surprises and challenges right at the tail end, and you heard about some of those in the financial update. But what I'd like to do is showcase some of the ups and downs of 2019, point you to areas in this regard in the annual report, but I know that I would be remiss if I did not touch on to the the extension into 2020 of some of those concerns. That includes the impact of the pandemic, our backlog, our service levels, and our challenges with IT. So I will try to address those as well, but I'll start with 2020 in the next slide. Within the annual report, we illustrate our key performance indicators, and Marcus did a very good job of the key performance indicators specific to our finances. And these are just an example of some of the key performance indicators that you will find there. This is an illustration of what Marcus reported on. So for example, on the left-hand side, anything that you see that was green is what we did against the blue bars is what we expected to do or were budgeted and committed to do in 2019. So as Marcus mentioned, overall, the revenues from all sources were very much on target, except for registration, because we had up to 3 months of no registration activity or revenue to collect. On the right-hand side, we did our best to ensure cost containment and keep within budgets, but Marcus reported overall on the net result of that. On the next slide, there are references to our volumes. So we track registration events and memberships compared to previous years. And again, I've shown this illustration to demonstrate the impact of that loss of activity with our registration applications that created that backlog in the last quarter. I don't have it here, but at the same time, our metrics for membership were solid and consistent, and our metrics with shows and trials for the 5th year in a row showed improvement. So our shows and trials increased 5 years. Oh, you do have it here. Thank you. There we are. The event results for 2019 were consistent. And this is the membership results showing, well, flat, consistent with the trend over the past 5 years, not so much in 2020. Moving on to the next slide, a lot of the less visible activity throughout 2019 was related to our objectives around advocacy and government relations as it relates to issues of canine affairs. Here are just a few examples highlighted within the annual report. Earlier today, I introduced Sarah McDowell, and her portfolio this year has moved closer to the executive office. So she's working more closely with me now, and she's made great progress over the past few years to gain our presence with decision makers. And she was present in coordinated resources, for example, over the issues in Quebec, the dangerous issues with breed-specific legislation, which we've seen recently turning around. It was an uphill battle that seemed to be reversing in favor of more responsible legislation in most recent times. As a side note too, Sarah's recently sent out a notification that in Quebec, there has been a reversal from the Veterinary Medical Association in that province on their ban of surgical procedures that the membership is pleased with. So overall, Sarah and I will be working closer together to ensure that Sarah is best supported, but quite frankly, so that Sarah can push me out and I can support her as a face and a voice for advocacy and government relation objectives. Joan has mentioned other activities in this regard, such as the International Partnership for Dogs membership, and the International Dog Workshop that Dr. Paul Eckford attended. And this, along with Sarah's attendance at the AKC Government Relations Conference in 2019, have truly demonstrated that CKC has walked onto the international stage. We've increased our networks, which is always a very powerful thing to do. we've increased our knowledge and brought a lot of that back to Canada to help serve our strategies with things such as health plans and strategies for our dogs. Moving on to the next slide, in 2019, CKC enjoyed a lot of highlights and showcases in the media. Just as an example here, you see some television exposure, for example, with the Sudbury and District Kennel Club Championship Dog Show featured on CTV News with CKC Board Director Richard Paquette and Judge, Life Member, Past Chair in 2021 Honorary Chair Thora Brown. Also, the members of the Newfoundland Kennel Club were featured in a video in January to promote the CKC, the Newfoundland Kennel Club, Canadian Canine Good Neighbor Programs, Junior Handling, and Responsible Dog Ownership. The last photograph there is another example with our CKC's digital media specialist, Ian Lynch, when he was featured on a segment on Global News, the morning show in July to talk about summer safety tips with our dogs. And among other things, Ian is works passionately for CKC. He's a strong advocate of purebred dogs, but he's also a social media celebrity, an on-air radio personality, as well as a purebred dog expert. So he very much represents one of our strategic imperatives to gain an interest in an audience with younger people for the future of our business and our industry. So as a few examples of 2019, another significant accomplishment in 2019 was the development, the approval, and the publication of the strategic plan that will guide us for the next 3 years, 2020 to 22. So I would say that during a crisis such as the one we are in right now, that involves pressures on our finances, our ability to provide service, a strategic plan can be more important than ever as a resource and a tool to guide us on what we should and should not be doing on an annual basis, and sometimes even on a daily basis. And a very rigorous process was used to develop the strategic plan, starting with the inputs. This included a review of the past strategic plan, including an assessment of what we accomplished, did not accomplish, what went well, what didn't go well, and what we may not do again. There were external inputs, and here I'm reminded of a very talented team from the Ivy School of Business that worked with us on an environmental scan. And they came back with a very refreshing perspective on what the external environment thinks and perceives and suggests that we should be pursuing over the next few years. And there was a lot of board and member interviews and surveys throughout the process. All of these ingredients were turned into a process of workshops. We confirmed board alignment with the messages and the direction we were going throughout the process. And there was inputs from areas like the audit committee and the audit committee chair for financial validation and keeping us aligned to what was feasible for our future aspirations. So the outputs were a refreshment of the values, mission, and vision for CKC, a review and a refreshing of the strategic imperatives and the core initiatives, which I'd like to provide in a little bit more detail right now. In the next slide shows that in our review of the previous plan, with respect to our mission, vision, and goals, we were pretty good. It stood the test of time, other than a refresh. And this is the mission statement that resulted through that effort. So we recognize that we continue very much to be the prime registry of purebred dogs in Canada, with a purpose to serve our members and the public in education, support, guidance, as well as sanctioning of events for their canine endeavors. Of course, our methodologies and our perspectives for members and public can become quite different, But ultimately, our goal is the preservation of purebred dogs and the health and well-being and enjoyment of all dogs. And that might be an example of a refreshment from the previous statement in that, first and foremost, we are advocates for purebred dogs, but we don't discriminate or discount that there are other dogs that exist, and by no means do we discount or ignore the well-being and enjoyment of all dogs. The next slide is the vision, what we aspire to be as a club and an organization. So with our members, we are a club, and we are all participants in this vision. We want to be the definitive authority. Will be the definitive authority in Canada for purebred dogs, first and foremost, and advocate for all dogs. We will set the standard for the preservation of breeds, as well as the continuous improvement of health, well-being, and the enjoyment of purebred dogs. And then finally, the values by which we will do this each and every day with every step and move we make. We will be driven by passion. As a club, our members and staff and others are dedicated to purebred dogs first and foremost, with a belief in the value of dogs as an integral part of our lives, society, and the contributions dogs bring to our humanity. Secondly, we are committed to the preservation of breed characteristics while producing healthy, well-socialized dogs, with a commitment to continuous improvement and well-being of purebred dogs. Next, we educate and expand public awareness of the contribution purebred dogs make to society or bring to society. And this includes a vast array of activities and opportunities for purebred dog enthusiasts, as well as a commitment to the principles of responsible breeding practices and responsible dog ownership. And last, we are committed to protect and enhance the interests of our own members, breeders, associated clubs, and the public, supporting them with openness, honesty, and compassion. And I did think I said last, but last was the integrity we use to uphold our registry, the high standard of governance and management of the Canadian Kennel Club. So getting into the meat of the strategic plan on the next slide, I believe that an effective strategic plan is simple. Easy to understand and simple. I've been asked by a few people that have seen this plan, some of the reactions has been, is that all there is? And no, it's not all there is. There's a significant amount of tactics and objectives and timelines and schedules underneath the 3 pillars I'm about to introduce, but they're fleshed out in an annual plan, in an annual budget, in other plans of different sorts. But at the highest level, our strategic plan is aligned to three pillars. First is to ensure responsible purebred dog breeding. Second, represent dog interest at all levels. And third, encourage greater participation in the CKC. I talked earlier about a reorganization at CKC earlier this year, and I said it was due to a great extent to align our talent and resources to these 3 strategic pillars. The concept of a registrar's office and the compliance in our relationships and policies and guidelines as it relates to the Animal Pedigree Act are for a great extent aligned to the first strategic pillar. As you can see there, it involves monitoring our policies to ensure that they continue to promote and enhance our breeding practices, offers support programs and tools that encourage responsible breeding practices. And I will briefly try and jump in with a few examples. In 2019, to the second check mark, we hosted the next phase of our breeder education program. And I recall facing 175 people in an auditorium coming together to listen to experts in the issues of best breeding practices. And then the third one is increased public awareness and the value of purebred dogs. The second pillar is representing dog interests at all levels. It covers a lot of things, but once again, I reference Sarah McDowell and the work that she's been doing to advocate for responsible legislation and governments. And again, Quebec, the activity in Quebec is a good example of this. Promoting responsible dog ownership. Yesterday at the first part of this weekend's Board of Directors meeting, a new handbook for the Canine Good Neighbor program was approved after a lot of hard work with a special committee assigned to refresh the program to make it more relevant to society today. And we take great passion and have plans for further promotion of this program because it touches the general public. Third, partner with special interest groups, veterinarians, and other key opinion leaders. A couple key examples in this regard is CKC through Sarah's membership is part of a national consortium of organizations specifically working on the issues of mass importation of dogs. And this kind of came to the forefront with that horrible situation recently with the Ukraine flight. And we used some of that experience in our network to produce press releases and offer our opinions to key stakeholders, as well as take a position with the public in general. We've been involved, I think, in 2019 with organizations at a more regional level when they are thinking of amending or creating bylaws for their jurisdictions as it relates to dog ownership, kennel practices. We've been engaged with the BC provincial government in this regard as well. The third pillar in the strategic plan is to encourage greater participation in the CKC. And undoubtedly, this has probably been our biggest focus given the current environment. So the first lead to technical activity there is to enhance the member experience through member-focused process efficiencies and technology. In a moment, you'll hear from Andrew in a more detailed way because this is a subject of tremendous attention right now. Empower members to contribute to the success and positive culture of CKC. I introduced Tara Merriman as the manager of HR and governance earlier today, and the concept of our membership in HR is somewhat linked in that this organization runs on the membership, and we couldn't do all the work that we do without the committees and councils. And we're committed to understand what environment is most conducive to do that effectively. Ensuring that the best tools, guidance, and orientation for those groups is in place in order to run effective meetings, follow effective work plans for their committees and councils. Another thing, as an example, as our legislation committee is trying within its constraints to address the issues of internal disharmony within clubs, et cetera, within the limits of what we're allowed to do. And then finally, increase and retain membership by promoting the value of CKC and associated events. One small example here, when I mentioned that environmental scan earlier in my comments, one of the messages that came out loud and clear is it's perhaps time to reintroduce the concept of a national show. Well, certainly not when I say time over the next 3 years. Certainly not this year is a good time for that. But the feedback from the Ivy School of Business is by redeveloping a modern event that uses modern trends and technology, we can better touch a wider audience and a younger audience and a different audience to gain interest in canine activities. So before I conclude and hand it off to Andrew, I did want to address the next slide and talk a little bit about 2020 and, for example, some of the impacts the pandemic has had on CKC operations or finances, and in particular shows and trials. You've heard a bit about how we started behind the 8 ball in significant backlog, because of the bumpy transition to our new IT system. We were furiously trying to catch up in all those regards for the first quarter of the year when we first found out about the impact of the COVID virus around March. At that time, our operations were became exclusively remote. And we knew immediately that we were likely dealing with the complete obliteration of the shows and trials part of our business for the rest of 2020. At that time, our highest priority was to reforecast and assess our finances for 2020. At the same time, trying to keep up with our backlog and the bottleneck of service that it was creating. Since then, we've learned some more. We've made adjustments. And for the last couple months, we've done quite well to strive for at least a break-even position for the last few fiscal months. And we are taking advantage of some of that backlog from 2019 that Marcus talked about and he predicted would provide benefit in 2020. And Andrew will talk a moment about our expectations around shows and trials, but with respect to service, before I hand it off, I'd just like to say that we are tracking weekly our backlog. And yesterday, my weekly report to the board indicated that our situation with backlog on registration applications is making progress. Back in February, we were reporting a backlog of files as large as 10,000 and more. Last week, for the first time, those numbers crept below 2,000. So that's a significant increase, a significant improvement, although we still got ways to go. At a high level, dog registrations are still too high for July and August. Litter registrations for us as backlog is still too high for August. There are some areas where we are up to date, like transfers and pedigree requests. And recognizing as well that a distraction for us was restarting the certificates for all of these transactions. In the last 60 days, we have mailed 11,272 certificates, which is representative of a big chunk of backlog. We are now mailing out August. And when I say that, I mean, these are the ones that went through smoothly. I know there will be very many members saying, why haven't I got mine yet? If that's the case, there are ones that we are working on as exceptions and corrections, etc. The other thing I can update for today is that the confirmation title certificates for the backlog from October 2019 to everything that we did have in 2020 have now been printed and handed off to quality process and expected to go out in the mail shortly. The last comment I will make is full recognition that the next frontier for us is to get a handle on the backlog of service requests. People are waiting far too long on the phones. People are not getting responses to all of our emails. And we've had some success, but we're reaching a saturation point with our live chat channel as well. We're doing everything we can within the financial constraints that we have, in which each and every little tweak, both to our processes as well as to the system that Andrew will talk about in a minute. We are getting closer and closer to normalcy once again. And we're doing everything we can in the meantime. And as an example, you may have received a notice that as we speak, if you do have questions very specific to something I said in your account in particular, the phone lines are open today. I believe it's 12 to 4. So those phone lines and contact points that you might use during a usual business day from 9 to 5 are at your disposal today from 12 to 4 as well. My last comment related to shows and trials is a very common question is, when are we going to have shows again? Should we have shows again? Are you going to cancel shows? Just a reminder that as we get into budgeting for next year, it's going to be the most difficult budget and business plan in a long time, in that we don't know how to schedule and resources and budget for shows and trials. It was Joan that said we are watching very closely some events that are occurring as we speak in jurisdictions like Ontario, and watching very closely their protocols and their compliance to local guidelines and regulations or provincial guidelines. Committees such as the Obedience Committee is working very, very hard and fast to adapt and adopt rules for members and clubs to have events with rules that respect the protocols for the pandemic situation. And I think the good work of the Obedience Council is being watched by other committees and councils so that they can do the same. Andrew, are you ready to take it from here?
Yes, I am.
Great, thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is the presentation on the IT for You project. As Lance mentioned, it's definitely a topic that everyone's asking about, talking about. So this presentation is roughly sort of broken into 3 segments. One is recognition of the difficult journey that we've had. The next one will be sort of where our current state is, and finally to give a little bit of a future sneak peek of where we're going. So as far as the background of the IT for Your project, I know some of you are aware of it, but we thought we would start from the beginning for the people that haven't. So why did we start the IT for You project? As Lance mentioned before, we had a 30-year-old system that was no longer under service and was at risk of crashing. And ultimately, it did crash at a very inopportune time. It had a lot of old data, so a lot of the stuff we've been struggling with after the launch is taking that old data and the old structure it was and trying to migrate it into a brand new system. We have a complex set of business rules, in events and in registration. So a lot of business rules, and a business rule is basically, when you register a dog, there's certain things that have to take place. That would be an example of a business rule. We also had a finance system that was trying to interact with APPX, which was the name of our old system. That was also quite complex. And there was limited remote access. So one of the benefits of the new system at perfect timing was all of our staff were able to work at home during COVID. So that was one of the advantages of the new system that we couldn't do with the old one. So part of the challenge that we had is we probably could have done with another 2-3 months to get the new system up and running. It was unfortunate the old system crashed, and that was sort of the online registration system that we used to have. We did put efforts in trying to bring it back online, but because it was so old, it was using a computer language that wasn't available anymore, and all the code was encrypted for security reasons, and no one sort of had the key to open it. So it was not possible at all to bring the old system back up. So that left us in a very difficult decision. Do we go live with a system that isn't perfect so that people can start doing self-service? Or do we hold off for a couple months that would have a big impact on backlog, which obviously we're still trying to recoup the time period that it was down. So it was a very difficult decision on whether to go live or not. The process that we took, that's under sort of the who was involved. At every step of the board, we had the IT for You steering committee made up of people that were members that have experience in this area, experiencing managing IT projects, and also the chair of the audit committee was involved, along with staff. The board approved all the budgets, and the vendor was selected after an extensive RFP process. So on my desk, there's quite thick binders of all the proposals that did come in. Also part of our decision making is we actually did go down to visit the AKC to talk about things like a system. And they were going through their own challenges with a lot of different systems they're going through. And they were also going through developing a new system. And I also did have email correspondence with the Kennel Club in England, and they were very much in the same position of a very old system trying to figure out what to do. So ultimately the decision was to go ahead with the path that we did take. So when? the 2019 system events. So the old system, as I mentioned, did crash in July, and we did have to do a hasty launch of the new system, which was not the way we wanted to do it. So the new system did launch late fall for membership renewals and for registration. And post-launch, because we did do what I would call a premature launch of the system for other reasons, a lot of our effort went into stabilizing the system and working out the kinks. So it was a very frustrating, rocky start that also prevented us from delivering a lot of the cool new features that we're hoping to implement in the first year. And that leaves us where we are now. So what are the next steps? So 2019 very much is 2020 is still very much focused on getting the system stable, getting shows and trials online, and then selectively adding new features where we can. So we have come a long way. We did launch the system. The dog registrations now available online are more than we had before. We launched the pedigree and transfer ownership for members. Since we've launched, for the applications that members are able to do online, including dog, litter, and transfers, 71% of applications that we get in are being done by members online. So that's an encouraging first number for this year. We also have the ability to see more information about your dogs online. That we thought would be a very good feature. It also ended up exposing things. So some of the most common questions in the first 6 months are, where are all my dogs? Did you lose my dogs? And part of that is the structure of the old system. So in the old system, we could always look up a dog and say, who owns this dog? And it would tell you. But there was different accounts for different people. So when the new system launched, and we can only connect one account to one email address when you log in, it was only connecting you to one of those accounts. So if you had that one account that had 10 dogs and that other record in the old system had 10 dogs, you would log in and think you were missing 10 dogs. So the dogs were already there, but it was connecting the two accounts. So that's one of the stumbling blocks we had, and the challenge with the old data and the structure of the old data was being able to connect this information. We also launched the certificates in PDF and paper. That was an interesting thing that we had developed, not thinking that we would actually need it right away. But when COVID hit, and for a period there when we couldn't get into the office and actually print the paper copies, that did come in handy, and we've gotten a very good reaction to PDFs, and that might be a good way to go in the future, having a PDF option, because it's been very well received. Memberships. So when we look at the 2020 renewals, 71% of those were done online by members. And if you remember it in the old method, we used to just invoice people ahead of time for their memberships. And staff would go through and process all these memberships. So the fact that 71% were done online is a good improvement as well. We were late to get the 2020 renewals out. So sometime October of this year, the renewals will start for 2021. And then for transparency, so I touched on that a little bit. Where before in the old system, you never saw the data. The new system, you see lots of data. So that's led to a certain degree of transparency that members can see more detail. And because they can see more details, they have questions about the data. So that comes to our attention, like connecting the dogs. And we've been going through that, and wherever possible, we do connect them all. So shows and trials is another big point of conversation. So we did get confirmation up and running. We're able to enter results, process those results, and output certificates. The confirmation title certificates, we have issued them all. So we've got them sitting there. The only little update from what Lance had said is that on Friday, the very first event that we processed, the certificates did actually go out in the mail. So the process has started to deliver all the ones from 2019 and also the ones from 2020 that occurred before, obviously, everything shut down. The next part of focus for shows and trials is those performance events. So right now, work is underway on obedience. It's going quite well so far. In our test environment, we are able to enter the results for obedience. And now we're going through the rules that are required to process those results. In tandem with obedience, that will be done shortly thereafter, and it builds on obedience, is obedience rally. They go hand in hand. So those are both being worked on. And the current schedule when we're tracking it is they're coming online at the end of October. And from there, we're also going through a prioritization exercise on what events will be next after that. Also, when we launch the system, it does show you the historical title information that your dog has. We know one of the things we promised when we went live is to actually show the progression of points towards a title. We know that's outstanding. That's part of the mix of what we want to work on next, is to be able to show the progression. Maybe the first step is not to show it for each event that occurred, but maybe a cumulative total. So this case goes again, tying back to that old data. For anything that we did for 2019 in the new system, we can show all of that. The problem happens that if your dog earns some points in the old system, it would only give you a partial picture. So we want to make sure we get that right before that we launch it. So we are listening and we are acting. So we do get a lot of emails, a lot of suggestions. Where the first part of the year, we were just sort of in modes of trying to get the thing stable and dealing with individual member queries. For the second part of the year, we've been able to sort of elevate a little bit to address some of the concerns. So I grouped them into sort of three main categories. So one of them that comes up a lot is better information. So we know that the transactional emails that you get when you process things online are not optimal. So halfway through the year, we did improve the email that you get when you register a dog in the litter. It gives you the pertinent dog information. But there are others, such as the agreement to a transfer of a dog that you'll get that basically says someone is transferring your dog, please agree with no details on the dog. So we are very much aware of that, and we actually have a project underway for that right now. The other one was mapping dog names and applications. So when we talk to members on this one, they really don't care about our application numbers. They certainly don't care about order numbers. What they care about is the name of their dogs. So we recently, about a week ago, launched the new My Applications area, where every dog and litter application will have a name of either the dog or the dam associated with the litter. So be better able to get those. And then I did mention, of course, the show points leading up to titles that we're aware of. The other one is making it easier to use. So to simplify and improve the online application. So I have sat down with members recently to review the process. And we know that members, based on the numbers, can fill out the applications. But when you observe them filling it out, some of the quotes I get are, in the sense, are a death by 1,000 cuts. So it's not that there's a huge structural issue with them, but there's enough little things that are wrong that it makes the process painful at times. So the types of questions that we ask, the way it's laid out, finding information. So we're aware of that, and I'll show you something later on that helps address that. And improving the checkout process. So that's a lot of that, Dean, is aligned to when you get to the cart, and if you have existing orders, if you've registered 8 dogs, it just shows 8 dog registration. It doesn't show you the names of the dogs. So it's very frustrating on what you're actually paying for. So again, we're aware of that, and we're dealing with that. The other one I sort of came up with, I was talking to a member, and they came up with Kennel Club Envy. And I thought that was a nice way of grouping things together. So Kennel Club Envy is, it's nice that we have a stable, and we want a stable system, but that's not really what we paid for and what we had hoped for. We had hoped for new features that other kennel clubs have, ones like the Finnish Kennel Club. So things like online pedigrees, health and breeding information, when are we to get those? So we have started some initial work around online pedigrees that I hope to have a positive outcome perhaps this year. And then some of the other ones like health and breeding information definitely have some board input. We touched on stuff that's coming out of the genetics committee. So once we get some of that input, we'll see what direction we can move. And the other one is involving members more. So in that regard, I do have an informal group of members that I started to consult with. on things like new features, showing them the new features before they're launched, looking at the transactional emails, and getting a better handle on the French. So on the member input, some of the things recently that we're focusing on are those emails. So when I talk about we're updating 20 transactional emails, we've shown 5 of them to those members. The ones that are getting the most input and excitement around are the ones that we send when you become a member. We send out an email. Some of the suggestions are, including the zone director and their email address, so it's easy to identify and contact them. The other big one is the one to new puppy owners. I know when we launched the system, we had emails going up to new puppy owners, but we were asking for consent, which was not a good thing to do since most of them were coming in through paper. So we turned that off, but we want to turn it on again, not for consent purposes, but really to promote purebred dogs and welcome them to the world of purebred dogs. So some of the suggestions that are coming up is to really promote participation in our events. So have a landing page on our website that has all the information about the events, some videos to do with the events. And in that welcome email to new puppy owners, send them to that landing page. Look into ways to entice them to go to a show. And then also what AKC does really well is connect them with their breed. So if you just excitement, it's the first time you've owned a dog and you have a breed, introduce them to the breed club. Introduce them to information about the breed. So I know AKC has sort of a breed package that goes out, and that's something we're looking into. And of course, that has a connection with the actual breed clubs and reaching out to them to get that information. So this is a little bit of a sneak peek of the ones that we're working on. So this is an example of the transfer of ownership consent. So we're doing 20 transactional emails. Some of the things that we're doing is, although the dog and litter had recently added the branding around it, there's still some emails going out that don't have the branding. So in this world of getting all the spam and things like that, having the CKC branding on it adds some legitimacy to it. And also including more of that information. So right now where the transfer ownership says, please consent without knowing any information about the dog, the new one will have the name of the dog, the date of birth, the breed, the gender, if it's being transferred to non-breeding, and the new owner information. So it'll give much more information to make an informed decision on what you're agreeing to. This is the one with the sneak peek for the My Applications and Orders. So although we made that recent change on our current site where we're giving that dog information, from now on it's showing sort of a sneak peek of stuff that we're working around, sort of, I want to call it a relaunch, but we're doing a major usability improvement that will be coming up shortly. So these are the screens from our test environment. So again, it clearly breaks down what status that you're in. So here's the application number, the date, the type of application, and it's got the name of the dog or the dam and the amount that you owe. And then the next one, I think that's a duplicate of the other one. So I think the slide after that is the cart. Okay, this is the cart. So again, repeating that information. So we'll have the details with the dog information and the dog, the description, maybe amount. So the cart right now is a bit confusing the way it looks, and it doesn't have that information. So going forward, it will. So that's stuff that we're working on right now in our test environment. And this is a sneak peek on the applications. So they're grouped a lot better now. There's a dam section, the sire, the litter. So this is the litter application. It also visually groups the information that's returned from the system. So in this case, the dam and the owner information is easier to find. 3, which you can't really see because it's small, but having a lot of those tooltips that when you click on them, it has more pertinent information about that field. That's also important in the sense that we have lots of instructions online right now, and for people that frequently use the system, it sort of gets in their way of quickly finishing the application. So having different types of help on the applications as well. So that's it for so it's again acknowledgement that we've gone through a difficult journey to get here. We're really focused this year on stabilizing the system, and we're only now getting to the point where we can start adding some new features that everyone wanted to get when we first launched. Thank you.
We have had a few questions come in for Lance and/or Andrew. But before we do, one of my board members, Linda St. Hilaire, would like to make a comment.
So thank you, Joan, for letting me do this comment before the question period. I would like to thank Lance and Andrew for such a thorough report. And I think it was important to finally acknowledge publicly that we need to improve a lot on service. But something that I tried to explain many times to my members and many other people is that CKC is a small business. It's not a huge business with tons of employees. You guys operate with 40 to oftentimes less than that full-time staff. Of course, there are many volunteers doing other tasks around it, but I find it very important that members knew that you are only a handful of people working on those tasks. So thank you very much to all the staff. I would like to reiterate that when my members ask me questions and they need help, oftentimes I receive a response in the middle of the night from some employees. I don't know that many people who are so dedicated to their job. So thank you very much to everybody.
Okay, the first question was actually related and came in after, and it was related to the financial report from our auditor. Peter Scott, we have been just been told that the 1.25 million at the end of December was the end of spending on the new IT system. In June, the board approved an additional 338,000 for IT support services. Why is this not considered? And what is the actual total cost to date?
I could start by saying Andrew and Marcus's response were correct. We quoted on the project direct costs for the project. The funding that was approved at the June meeting was a combination of a shuffle of capital expenses. And I think Andrew explained that with the notion that the project proper is finished, and we're still holding on some funds that haven't been released. Everything else related to that is an operationalized expense.
Thank you. We have one from Linda Torrance, Zone 5. Many breeders have seen an increased interest in purebred dog sales. What are the current registration numbers for 2020?
I know that the volumes are significantly higher and the associated revenues are significantly higher than the same time last year, but I don't have, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared with the exact number. So I don't have that at this point, sorry.
Our next question comes from Linda Torrance, again from Zone 5. What is the projected loss of revenue in 2020 from shows and trials?
If I could answer that in projected loss due to the lack of shows and trials, and answer it that way, I hope you're sitting down, Linda, because they're big numbers. But as I had mentioned to the board yesterday, when we first found out that it was likely that we would not have any shows and trials after March of this year, the impact in the first reforecast was as high as $1 million loss. But we new information and cost-cutting efforts continue every single day. The next reforecast a few months later was around 650,000. So it was chopped significantly. And every day we're working with the audit committee on cash projections. And the last couple months, we've managed to break even. And September marks the end of the third quarter of the year and will involve another reforecast. So the best answer for you at this point in time, a loss of $1.5 million in revenue, is currently sitting at about a $650,000 loss for this year that will put a strain on those financial resources that Marcus was telling us about.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Mark Relsky, Zone 7. Hi. With the drop-off of event results in the last quarter of 2019, what has the board done to deal with that? Have they looked at stopping Double Show Weekend in Ontario and other larger population areas to alleviate splitting entries for confirmation and performance events?
As somebody considers helping me with that answer, I'll just say that there's been a tremendous amount of flexibility and nimbleness to react, but I don't understand the question and can't answer it. I'd have to ask for support.
Thank you. We'll move on. We have a question. from Alberta. Do you have a timeline for the clearing of the backlog for registrations and performance events?
Yeah, so we report on that weekly, and Sherry does her best to make a commitment to that. At this stage, it's broken down by different tracks. Like I said, I think I said earlier, the dog registrations is July and August right now, whereas litter registrations is just August, and transfers and pedigrees are relatively up to date. So we've been flirting with the October-November timeframe, but as a commitment to have all of the streams up to date. But the other thing that I think I'm going to working with communications is to make these figures more transparent now that we have a more robust understanding of the backlog in the system, the productivity reports. So these are the type of metrics that we're going to start publishing online.
So on the performance side, I might need help as well from Sherry. So if we get the obedience rally up by the end of October, I'm not too sure the volume that's pending or how long it typically takes to process them. But I know when we can start processing them.
Yes, I'm not sure I can commit to the timeline because at this point, I'm not exactly sure how long it will take.
Our next question is from Mark Relsky, Zone 7. Congratulations to the board on the development of an MVV statement and the START strat plan. The pillars are clear and make sense and provide a roadmap for future board to follow. The key will be ensuring that they stick to this as a guide and map for the future. How has the board ensured this happens?
In my comments, I made the statement that the execution of a 3-year strategic plan is laid out specifically in each annual budget and business plan that the board reviews and approves as presented. The other comment in respect to that is we have a strategic planning committee, and their terms of reference is specifically to do exactly what Mark's question was. It's a monitoring committee to keep us watching and monitoring our progress against the strategic plan.
Thank you. The next question is from Judy Elford. Can we get the ability to print title and registration certificates right from a dog's profile? Stop mailing paper and save money and faster service to members.
Yeah, I mean, part of that's a board decision on what we do. But since now that we're generating PDFs and emailing the PDFs, we could connect the PDF itself to an individual's dog's record.
Thank you. We have another question from Anna Filipova, Zone 11. I have 2 questions related to the current presentation. Mr. McAllister mentioned that the old system crashed in July 2019. How is that possible if we still could send applications and receive registration papers and show certificates up to October 2019?
So basically what happened is the system crashed, but the online system, as far as members could process applications, crashed, but the backend system, APPX, was still functioning. So what basically happened is staff started to enter those applications and those shows results, and that's why the papers were coming in. But we were never staffed to the point where we could support all those applications coming in. So the business model was always that members were doing self-service. So when that option disappeared, the backlog started to grow.
Okay, the second part of that question is, Mr. McAllister mentioned that 71% of applications are being done online in the new IT system. In previous AGMs, we were shown that 80% of applications were done online on the old IT system. So instead of increasing online usage, it is decreasing. Is there an explanation for that?
Yeah, so when we first launched, it didn't have all the applications online, like the transfers and the litters. So those were still being processed internally. It's also somewhat related to the backlog in the sense that all the paper applications that came from in 2019 are being processed by staff in 2020. So that makes up that amount.
Thank you. We now have a question from Nancy Menard-Cheng from Zone 3. It is a French question, and we will have our interpreter read it in French, and interpret it.
Right, so currently we're discussing right now the next steps for shows and trials. So as I mentioned, we're working really right now on obedience and rally obedience. Part of that equation is what other events do we work on, or do we take some of those resources now and get the progression of points working for confirmation. So part of it, it's a business decision with board input on where we allocate the resources next.
Thank you. We have a question from Jean-Christophe Boulanger. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. From Zone 3, Quebec. Is there a plan to implement an option for show event secretaries to submit results automatically to CKC that would update the dog files?
Yeah, so that's always been the vision. So we've been in discussions with some show secretary and show services that have systems that can interact with ours when we're ready. And we've also reached out to some resources in the agility community that also have systems that help in that regard. So that's definitely a vision, is to have electronic submission of event results.
Thank you. We have a question from Krista Procu. How can this be considered completed? Is there an estimate for when the rest of the events will be completed? This is in result to the calendar of events and event results.
So the initial focus for events, first is recognition that it's been a challenge to get everything online, and we're not where we want to be. But the focus has been on being able to enter results for staff and being able to get the certificates out. So there is an outstanding item to get the calendar events up and running. So we know that has to happen, but the initial focus right now is being able to enter results and get those certificates out.
If I might try an additional piece based on my interpretation of that question, the answer as it was provided, me saying that the project is finished, was an answer to a financial question. It acknowledges that it doesn't translate to what the member experiences today. It was to answer how much has been spent. And we mentioned that and how much we're holding off to get the rest of the project, but the answer was to the earlier financial questions.
I have a comment from Debbie Mayashita. Debbie Mayashita, great report. Wish I could clap.
Thank you, Debbie.
Another question from Jean-Christophe Boulanger, again, Zone 3, Quebec. Members have access to their account for their transactions and applications. Is it in the plans for clubs to have a separate access for anything related to them, such as events, renewals, etc.?
Yeah, so when we did the requirements for the system, the long-term vision has always been to have an area where clubs can log in and manage their activities with CKC.
We have a question from Carol Chalmers. When new information available to pet owners on transfer of ownership, will the data be available even though the new owners were not CKC members?
I think if I understand the question correctly, anyone can log in to the portal and have a portal account. They have access to their dog information. There are board discussions ongoing right now on the system has the capability of showing some stuff to members and not to non-members, and finding that balancing act right now enough to sort of entice people to become members to see more is the discussion. So there is a distinction between members and non-members and how we execute that.
We have a question from Diana McKenzie. You say the confirmation certificates are caught up. Here in Zone 7, my members are asking about the performance certificates. Many need the acknowledgement of a title to proceed to the next level in entering trials. Can I safely tell them that obedience and rally certificates will be caught up and mailed out by the end of October?
I think Gary's saying before is it's hard to commit on when they're going to get out. I think for people that are concerned on where they can move up, I think we had some guidance on that, Sherry, I think.
Yes, so if ongoing, if a member or exhibitor wants to know about their points, they can contact us, and we'd have to look it up manually, so it will take some time. It won't be on the spot. We do have staff in the office to do that, but you have to understand there's other priorities happening. So, that just slows us down if it's going to take an hour to go through all the results manually, an hour or two. for one person.
A question from Nancy Menard Cheng from Zone 3. If a loss of 650,000 K is expected, as the CKC put in place means to address the budget shortfall resulting from the cancellation of dog events?
The two answers to that is we have cash reserves and we continue to challenge the processes to make that number as small as possible. It's an ongoing process.
Question from Alistair Sutherland. Question for Andrew. Could you comment on your thoughts about proceeding with the new feature implementation versus using all resources available to perfect, what is currently offered online? Do we have the human resources to do both simultaneously?
So we're balancing right now. So part of our strategy is, I think people are
questions like that. You already know the answer to that question.
So part of our frustration obviously has been with the vendor we chose. So some of the stuff we're doing as far as improving the system are done in parallel. They're not being done with the vendor that's working on shows and trials. So we are able to do some of that. But sort of thank you for recognizing that there's only so many of us.
We have a comment from Tina Godet. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. First, I would like to commend Lance, all the staff, and the board of the CKC for the excellent progression of the club through the challenges of the new IT program and the current pandemic. With staff working remotely very successfully, what does future hiring for CKC staff coast to coast look like?
Thank you, Tina. One age-old struggle is our ability to service the membership in French. And we've become a lot more confident through this experience in our ability to manage remote staff, where we haven't got it down perfectly yet, but using Tina's example, we are open to staff working remotely to satisfy deficiencies like our ability to work in French. And that doesn't have to be limited to just the French skill set.
Okay, I will now turn it back to Lance to go through the committee and council reports. He will introduce the chairs of the independent standing committees.
As an introduction, the CKC committees and councils that support the work of the club, CKC's mandates, are driven by CKC members who volunteer time and expertise. So this is always one of the best opportunities to thank all of those members who so generously participated in 2019. And this is showcased in the annual report. There's 4 groups in particular of committees and councils, and I'd like to provide a few highlights of the work done by each of the groups, starting with the standing committees. The independent standing committees play a critical role in helping CKC maintain key regulatory and business functions of the club. I won't go into any detail because the chairs of all these important committees are represented on our call today, and a few, I think at least a couple have asked to say a few words. If I might, I'll go through the committees, and this is where I do not have the exact names in front of me. The Appeals Committee is the chair of the Appeals Committee, Diane.
Lionel Whitaker. Mm-hmm.
And I know a couple people have volunteered, but I do not have the names. Was Lionel one that would like to say a few words?
No.
Say hello. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being here, Lionel. I am sure that Tanya Houghton has confirmed that she would like to say a few words as chair of the Audit Committee.
I would like just to say that I'm so fortunate to have 2 very knowledgeable accounting professionals on my audit committee, Lori Cody and Bob Ernst. And I just would like to say thank you for their dedication and diligence during these challenging times. I would also like to thank CKC finance staff, Jasoda and Bernie in particular, for their hard work and continuous collaboration with the audit committee. It is absolutely critical and it is very helpful to us. So thank you very much. And finally, thank you, Lance, for making these resources available. I know you're stretched, so I truly appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. The Discipline Committee is chaired by Lucy Bender, who is joining our call today. Lucy, would you like to say a few words or should I move on?
I could just say a couple of words. I would like to thank my fellow committee members for their dedication and their willingness to participate in this. I also wish to thank the Board of Directors for entrusting us with what we consider a very important job, and the staff at the CKC for always being there for us and their incredible loyalty and their help to us. So, thank you.
The chair of the registration committee is Ray Iredale, and I know that Ray is with us. He's on mute right now, but would like to say a few words.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I have the honor to chair the registration committee. I'm also a member of the legislation committee and a member of the ROE committee, as well as a member of a number of other ad hoc committees. So this quality team of volunteer members found 2019 to be a year busy as usual, with a number of files provided by staff reflecting a 3.4% increase in comparison to the average for the 5 years previous. The staff also resolved registration files equal to the average for the 5 years previous. And our examining committee completed 48.6% more examinations than the average for the 5 year previous, reflecting quite an increase of dogs being imported to Canada from clubs that are not on the CKC's list of recognized foreign stud books. As we move forward each year, the registration committee also endeavors to address, update, and amend the policies that are no longer functional or appropriate for registration programs today. And in closing, this committee wishes to acknowledge the value of the staff for their assistance, as well this board for their positive approach with their consideration of all policy amendments requested that are submitted. We appreciate all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. The next group of committees is the standing committee. There are 11 standing committees, and they have quite a broad range of areas of focus, all very important to different areas of success for CKC and detailed in the annual report. At the risk of offending a few of the committees, I'm going to offer a few highlights. For example, the Strategic Planning Committee supported the establishment of the new strategic plan in 2019 that I spoke about, and as somebody asked, is charged with monitoring it throughout the 3 years. The Responsible Dog Ownership Committee focused on several key initiatives, including the importation of dogs into Canada, as well as a review of a number of CKC policy statements due for an update and refresh. Among a number of other projects includes the Genetics and Medical Committee that drafted a canine well-being strategy with a goal of supporting national breed clubs to improve the overall well-being of purebred dogs at a breed level. And the other example is the Communications Committee, who developed a public relations crisis management strategy to help CKC, and also developed a number of initiatives to support clubs in their events, such as the club promotion guide and CKC's branded materials. The next group of committees and council are the standing councils. And each of the CKC's official events have a corresponding council made up of volunteers who have expertise with that event. And the councils make recommendations to the board related to the events, including changes to rule books, processes, procedures, and more. And then finally, the last group is select committees. These are, for the most part, ad hoc committees appointed when the need arises. They provide timely, important recommendations to the board on matters ranging from health and well-being of dogs to project-based committees. As an example, the ERP steering committee, which was the IT related to the IT project, is an example of this. The Canine Good Neighbor Committee was also busy in 2019. focused on evaluating and planning for the future relaunch of the CGN program, Canadian Good Neighbor, Canine Good Neighbor. And then finally, the other example is the planning for an event such as CKC's AGM. Especially during a pandemic, it would not have been possible without the support of the AGM Planning Committee. In 2019, this committee planned and hosted a successful AGM in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It featured guest speakers such as David Truss from Agriculture Canada, that had huge benefit in terms of keeping up that conversation since the AGM, partially due to the feedback that he received from the membership in attendance. We also had speakers just after the AGM speaking on issues of promoting civil discourse and consensus building amongst diverse groups, which was topical for the CKC at any point in time. So in summary, the above highlights a small portion of the significant amount of work CKC's committees and councils accomplished in 2019. So please refer to your report for details on what each and every committee and council focused on last year. And once again, thanks to everyone involved.
Okay, thank you very much, then, Lance. Next, we will go to our 50-year members. We are thrilled that so many of our members are celebrating a significant milestone in their service to CKC this year. Congratulations to all of you who are celebrating 50 years of membership. You are a valued member, and your continued contributions are vital for the organization's success. Thank you very much. We are now going to open the floor to new business. This is for members to submit questions or comments. If questions or items are raised under new business, if they're not resolved during the meeting, they will go forward to the board for the appropriate action or referral. And just a quick reminder that no new motions get done at this time. There are no new motions during an AGM. The only motion was the verification of the minutes.
Thank you, Joan. As we have several questions that came in through our registration process, we will start off with those. We have a question from Suzanne Vaux from BC. When are the listed breeds that have been sitting in limbo for years going to get full CKC recognition?
The CKC staff and our Rules of Eligibility Committee have been working with Agriculture Canada for a while now. As you know, the breed's been on hold since the 2016 referendum. We feel that there are tremendous effort on our part of the committee and staff, and we hope to get some very good news and very soon from Agriculture Canada. As of Thursday, I was able to receive I received an email from Agriculture Canada, and it sounds very promising. So we'll keep our finger crossed and hope that we will get some good news very soon.
We have a question from Lisbeth Fisher from Ontario. What are you doing to make shows more desirable for breeders, owners, and handlers?
As Lance mentioned when he was going through the annual report, we have all these councils that represent the different disciplines. So it is actually the decisions of the council. So members or exhibitors bring those ideas to their zone reps, who then bring the ideas to the council members, who discuss it at length and offline and through council meetings, and decide if those ideas should go forward to the board for a recommendation for implementation. So if you have any great ideas, please reach out to your council reps so we can make those programs more desirable. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. We have a question from Alistair Sutherland from Ontario. What are the most significant challenges for the new board of directors?
We do go through a process around this time of year, in particular when one board is moving on to the next and the committees and councils do hand off documents, both to ensure the momentum continues and work already started. I'm sure Joan may want to facilitate answers from others, but after today's discussion, I would nominate service levels, IT, and everything and other items prioritized in the strategic plan is my personal input to that question.
Thank you. Here's a question from Sandy Malcolm from BC. Will the CKC be taking a stronger and more prominent stand in the state of purebred dogs in Canada in the coming years? Will the CKC be more involved with the public for education for people wanting to buy purebred dogs?
I think the short answer is yes, as evidenced by the reports today and some progress and momentum we've gained over the past few years, as well as the highlights in the strategic plan and the board's direction for the staff to commit to this.
This next question comes from Teresa Carpenter. I was wondering what the phased-in plan would be for the continuation of dog shows in the future.
We don't know what the future is going to look like, but every council is looking at options for when we finally get to a new normal, if that helps.
And the only thing I'll add, in case it was part of the question, is yesterday in the board meeting there was discussions around formats as well, such as virtual, and watching how others have had success in this regard, and if it's a possibility for the future of CKC events.
Our next question comes from Kathy Wankel from BC. I personally feel that future board meetings and committee meetings should be concluded with a service like Zoom. This would save the club all of the expenses of flying, hotels, etc. that are incurred. My question is, will there still be the future judging seminar in this year in BC, seeing there were no shows this year to judge at, as well as ring steward? Alternatively, will these requirements be waived?
The seminar that was to be held in Vancouver in November has been postponed to next November in the same location. We also have, the board has passed some considerations through the pandemic for permit judges. There's several motions that were to allow some flexibility for those judges who need some numbers and couldn't get this year. So if you want if you want me to send you those motions, I can do that offline.
The next comment is from Valerie Rideau from New Brunswick. Very pleased to see the AGM virtual. Keep at it.
I was looking for an opportunity, and that comment is a very good one. Thank you for the comment and the encouragement for this format for the AGM. I did receive some challenges on the validity of holding the AGM by this format and during this timeline based on our current bylaws. And I just wanted to use this opportunity to say that it was done with full recognition and acknowledgement and guidance from Agriculture Canada as an exception, given the extenuating circumstances. Thank you.
The next one comes from Susan Blay from Ontario. I have been following the CKC updates, but they only seem to focus on new litters. It would be good for updates on other things, as people are getting really discouraged with getting other titles. It is not the fact that they are behind, and we understand that, but it is being ignored. It is better to know that it will take an estimated number of months than to feel that it isn't important and is just ignored. We need to feel that other activities, and not just breeding, is important.
Thank you for that. And one of the comments we got from the videos is that that format is appreciated, but to sort of address issues in a more condensed fashion, and to help offset that, to your comments, we're seeking to become more comprehensive in those updates online. Like I said earlier, some of the charts that we review internally and use internally and with the board, I think are ready for public publication so that the membership can track their area of concern more closely. So thank you.
I have a rather lengthy question and some comments that have come from a number of individuals. Stephanie Toom, Kathy Martin, Sandy Snedden, Heather Whippler, Tammy Yelland, Bev Boose or Bousset, Brian Lucas, Bernice Lucas, Dr. Chen Chiswick, Caroline Sobolski, and Tyler Sobolski. Again, I apologize if I'm messing anyone's names up. I will read this out in full. Good afternoon. Our questions and concerns today are directed to the entire board. Collectively, we, the members listed above, represented well over 100 years of involvement in CKC confirmation activities and our breed, the purebred Bichon Frise. We are writing to tell the board that we are in serious danger of losing the formal representation of the Bichon Frise as we know it here in Canada, if no steps are taken immediately to prevent the further decline in interest in the breed through formal CKC club representation. At this time, there are 9 reputable active Bichon Frise breeders in Canada, period. This is an all-time low. Currently, those of us who are actively competing in confirmation championship shows cannot even get a regular championship on our dogs for lack of entries and low breed numbers in general. If not for the participation of our US counterparts showing here in Canada over the last few years, we would not have been able to achieve championships on our Bichons at all. Unfortunately, American participation has been waning as exhibitors age and now is further complicated due to COVID-19. We, the longtime pioneers of our breed, the Bichon Frise in Canada, have left the existing national club due to infighting, politics, lack of scheduled CKC events, and general dysfunction, which has been long-standing and well documented with the CKC. This has left the breed with a void that is impossible to fill due to CKC rules. We recognize that the only way to revive and ignite new interest in our breed is to start a new club where the focus is on the Bichon instead of politics. Our talents and expertise in the breed are many. To encourage more people into the breed requires the efforts and knowledge of longtime breeders to mentor new breeder fanciers. So what is the problem? Currently, the CKC has a rule that states there can only be one national club for any one breed. This rule is not only prohibitive, preventing members the choice of what club they wish to belong to nationally, because only one is allowed, but also makes starting another new Bichon Frise club in any other region of Canada impossible. The numbers of active CKC breeders and show participants across Canada is tiny. Some provinces have no members at all, and BC and Manitoba have only a dozen or so. Currently, the only option the CKC offers is to open a new breed club, is to have regional chapters, for example, Western Canada chapter, etc. With the national members being so low, this is not viable from either a financial management or board perspective. You cannot have a Western chapter with 4 or 5 members. Our hands are tied. Historically, the CKC has recorded endless divisions within this breed club because certain individuals held board positions for over a decade, and as a result, the existing club is on its way to demise. A new club must be created to fill this void and generate new interest in our breed. CKC members should have the right to choose which national club they belong to. CKC members should have the right to participate in a club that best suits their needs. Unfortunately, the size of our country prevents small clubs from flourishing, so the answer is obvious. There needs to be changes made to the existing rules and regulations, legislation to allow more than one national breed club or other legislation to allow a club which services the entire country with one board. Times change. Members need change, and CKC legislation needs to change along with the times to accommodate the need of its membership. A different name denotes a different club. Why then can there only be one national club? We longtime members, some of us over 30 years, myself over 25 years, and most over 15 years noted above, is too late. The studbook pages show stats, and individual registrations bear out that what I am saying is true. We would like to see the CKC assign a specific board member to urgently work on this and get it done. We have been asking this for years, spinning our wheels due to this antiquated legislation. New measures need to be brought to bear to revitalize our breed now. We respectfully ask that you consider our request to preserve the Bichon Frise in Canada and change the necessary legislation to make this happen immediately.
I would strongly suggest that this file be handed over to the board to have a look at and for consideration of reviewing the policy and how to deal with things such as this moving forward. So I would strongly suggest it go on to the board referral.
Thank you. We have a question from Kim LeBlanc. We have been participating in an AGM today, September 12th, 2020. But as per 8.1 of the bylaws, the annual general meeting of the members shall be held no later than the last week of June each year on a date and location designated by the board. Board has a discretion to fix date, but whatever date is chosen, it cannot be later than the last week of June. Question, what exactly does that make this Zoom meeting of the CKC, seeing as how it violates our bylaws to call it an AGM?
A few minutes ago, Leela may wish to comment, but Leela facilitated a discussion with the extenuating circumstances created this year with Agriculture Canada to expand the guidelines and the restrictions for holding AGMs, when and how.
And that's correct. We had approval from Agriculture Canada to hold our meeting virtually. There are also other association under Agriculture Canada had done the same thing as well.
We have a question from Stephen Shepherdson from Comox, BC. Given performance issues, what is CKC's service recovery plan?
Well, we've addressed it as best we could with the update presentations today. It's a very broad question, but I think we've answered that. The backlog goals, the performance event goals, and the backlog of the performance results have been addressed throughout this day in the presentations.
We have a question from Ellen Becker from Ontario. Will CKC be holding any virtual events similar to AKC Virtual Rally?
The Obedience Council had an informal meeting here about 2 weeks ago to examine the concept of having a couple virtual rally titles. The presentation will probably be a discussion under new business at the board meeting tomorrow afternoon.
We have a question from Patricia Cummins from Victoria, BC. When will we be able to see show records online, points accumulated on our dogs as promised in the original plan for the new system? Or at least when will show results be accessible again online past December 2018?
I think Andrew stepped away, but I think that was also addressed in the presentations today. Points, confirmation is available, points are not available yet because of competing priorities with the launch of performance events, and titles are now a new feature that are viewable. I'm not sure if I've answered each element of that question.
Aaron Gibson from Alberta. I question the validity of CKC, who has avoided my many requests for a corrected certified pedigree and who has not provided certificates for titles earned almost a year ago and later. As a member who has paid in advance the required fee for membership and additional fees for service that have not been rendered, as well as the expense of showing, confusion, anger, and extreme disappointment which with CKC reigns supreme. What, if anything, is CKC going to do to rectify this unbelievable situation for me and the many, many other members caught in this whirlwind of unfulfilled obligations?
So at a general level, once again, I think these were subjects of the presentations today, but if we can take those member contacts, we can look into the specifics of her particular account to see if they have been addressed according to what was reported today.
We have one from Bill Randall. To the CKC directors, this GSDCC Incorporated is the only CKC National Breed Club presently fully approved by the CKC and the FCI to hold utility sporting events, IGP, in Canada as defined per Article 11 of FCI statutes, which is the article that makes the present FCI CKC Memorandum of Understanding a viable entity. With assistance from fellow GSDCC member breeder CKC Director Paquette, we, the GSDCC Incorporated IGP Committee, have submitted a proposal to the CKC Strategic Planning Committee. In summary, it is requesting that the CKC cooperate and support the GSDCC in further modeling our IGP system such that it can become a future CKC performance event. We developed a program meeting all FCI criteria, and now we request. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you did say it was quite a lengthy email, and from the preamble, it mentioned that a proposal has been made to the Strategic Planning Committee, and that is in fact the case, and that committee met Thursday evening of this week. So in the interest of time and hopefully with the support of the board, I could say that the proposal has been received, and the outcome of that discussion will be followed up shortly. So is that okay, Joan? Or
Yes, that's fine.
Hillary Culp. As someone with a breeder that doesn't have a national club and won't because we don't have the fanciers to meet CKC requirements, I wonder where the proposed pet owner email would send people. Currently, a club with no member of my breed is listed as national club.
Yes, so I think the intent behind that is to give them more information about the breed that they purchased. So where there is a club, we'll connect them with the club. Where there isn't a club, whatever information we can supply to them about the breed will be provided.
Thank you. We have one from Devon Nutbeam. Given that the registration system has been impaired for so long, both online and manually, such that members have been exceedingly frustrated in their attempts to register litters and dogs, why are late fees being charged?
they shouldn't have been. We recently launched a facility to submit requests to have that reviewed. I think it was launched this week and available on the website. But for the short answer, they should not have been, and we will correct anything that is brought to our attention.
We have a comment from Sean Nichols. I agree with Mark's comments on the 3 pillars. I think it's brilliant to engage and promote responsible dog ownership for all dogs. I breed and show cats with the CFA, which offers a household pet category, as it shows with evidence that 67% of people who take a future interest in a purebred. This increases revenue for clubs and CFA with a positive impact on the sport. The next one is from Tina Godet. Should we be looking at new criteria for becoming a member of CKC? For example, there are many people breeding purebred dogs, but they never participate in any CKC events, but sell puppies under the guise of being purebred. Should membership acceptance be based on active participation in events potentially?
I think the whole issue of categories of membership has been in preliminary discussions for quite some time now. That's the type of factor that would be included in that discussion. It's a good point.
Thank you. Our next question from Denis Gros-Louis is a French question, if we can have an interpreter.
So I know sort of attaching official documents like the pedigrees and the registration certificates has been discussed. So this year the focus was on stabilization, but what new features come out after that is under discussion and prioritization.
Question from Linda Torrance. What security precautions are in place for certificates being printed by members? Do we need to worry about the misuse of them?
I know we had a similar discussion last night around version control around certificates, and questions were brought up about now that we're sending out PDFs, what are the considerations? So I think that was a board discussion that was held last night.
We have another French question from Chantal Bedard, if we could please go ahead.
So this, without looking, I would send the details and we'll look into it, but it could be that case where I was talking about older data where it might not be connected to the login that she's using. So that might be one of the reasons, but you can reach out to us.
We have a question from Brian Reed, Zone 2. The event calendar is not up to date. Can you comment on how many events are still proceeding for the rest of 2020?
So we don't have a event calendar how it used to appear, how it used to be fancy and come up with the little calendar icons, but in the same place where you looked for it before. So on the website, in the blue menu bar, there's a thing that says events. If you select down, it says events calendar. When you select that, it'll bring up a table of information. This table of information has all upcoming events. You'll have to scroll a bit to find your region. And it gets updated every couple of days as we hear about new events that have decided to host an event at a later date and what have you. If you are looking for the lists of postponed events, just in terms of your own records or in terms of if any events upcoming decide to postpone, that is still underneath the COVID-19 information where you can find on the home page by scrolling down.
We have a comment from Rachel Jesse. I recently used the online portal for the first time to register 6 puppies with miscellaneous status. I found the portal easy to use and the process worked well. Thank you to Andrew for walking me through the process. Question from Kristen Francis. As the question put forward by Mark Welski was not answered, has the board looked at stopping double weekends in Ontario as an example, especially in the GTA area, specifically limited shows in the GTA?
Oh, I think I said that, yeah, I answered it generally that different options are being looked at, but I couldn't speak directly to that particular idea unless a member of the board knows or it just hasn't simply reached to the top yet.
Paul.
I believe several years ago, the board passed a motion that grandfathered certain clubs into remaining with double shows, but if they made changes, etc., to their venues or their dates, they were no longer eligible to be on the same weekend with the current restrictions and travel distances between shows. And I remember that motion going through and working on it, which would, unfortunately, it does not address the current issue of having double clubs on show weekends in Ontario, but over the next 8 or 10 or 12 years, Christian should be able to solve that issue.
So it sounds like this question needs to be taken away for follow-up.
Follow-up.
CJ Thompson, the meeting is being recorded. Will it be available on CKC website for review at a later date? I need to leave the meeting soon.
Yes, the benefit of a virtual meeting is that we actually have a quicker turnaround time for the videos. So fingers crossed, if everything goes as planned, we should have the video from this AGM posted by the end of October.
Mark Ralski, Zone 7. I'll try again and make my question clear as I can. Has the board discussed lower entries at shows and performance events as indicated in Lance's CEO report showing lower revenue in 2019 compared to 2018? What tactics are being discussed to increase entries? Example, no more double shows being held in the same province and splitting entries in competition to finish dogs championships due to low entries and lack of competition?
I guess the more direct answer to Mark's question is no, not that specific example. But with Paul's input, we will go back to specify it in more general ideas and approaches to replace the revenue is ongoing. But I think the short answer to your very specific question now is no.
Malkrowski, Zone 7, once again, a question about cash reserves referred to by Marcus earlier. How much is left as we speak in 2020?
We monitor the cash reserves weekly. Bernie is having technical difficulties with her audio, but she has sent me a message that very roughly at a high level, our cash reserves represent a total of 2.5 million.
Valerie Bordeaux, comment, not question. Would like to thank Shows and Trials, particularly Marg Fennick, who has provided excellent communication whenever requested regarding club activities, rules, etc. I'm very appreciative of the AGM and board meetings being available online. Very much appreciated. Thank you. Valerie Bordeaux, Zone 2, New Brunswick. Okay, Lily Egging, Zone 6, Ontario. How do we make new motions? I asked this question when I signed up for the AGM and received no response.
Joan, you mentioned in your comments that motions aren't.
At an AGM, motions are not accepted. No. The only motion is to accept the minutes of the previous minutes. And everything else comes in as information and it's dispersed to committees, councils, the board, referrals, but there are no motions from the floor for an AGM other than adjourning the meeting, things like that.
Next one is from Devon Nutbeam. Would it be possible to institute town halls, possibly every 3 to 4 months, whereby members could have Q&A opportunities with CKC staff and as many board members as possible?
For sure. I know that some zone directors definitely do that. I've been invited to a few of them, and there has been recent discussions to have it at a broad, beyond the borders of just the zones, but we haven't been able to address those recently. But just looking across, I know that some examples are Lendra, Paul, and Linda that have held zone meetings.
We have one from Patricia Cummins. BC Zone, has the CKC ever considered allowing a system like the foundation stock service that the AKC has for new incoming breeds, which allows owners to compete in similar open shows to help introduce them? It is very discouraging to those interested in new breeds that it takes so long to go through the breed recognition process.
Yes, the AKC Foundation stock is record keeping, and they did open it for some disciplines, similar to our miscellaneous breed.
In the program for miscellaneous breeds do allow for participation in events, correct?
Correct.
From Linda Torrance, would it not be in the CKC's best interest to seek out an outside public relations firm which could give the CKC a much greater voice with the general public, as well as with Agriculture Canada? Speaking of AgCan, how many breeds are currently waiting for approval, and why are they still on hold? Is it not time to detach ourselves from them?
The first part of the question regarding a public relations firm, we have engaged that in an experimental pilot mode recently and monitoring the outcome and the return on that investment. The other one is a bigger strategic question that I can't address.
From Nancy Menard Cheng, does the CKC have a plan to do something about mass importation of dogs and brokers?
I alluded to that a little bit. If Sarah is on the call still and is willing to offer some recent insight on our efforts in that regard. Okay.
Yes, we absolutely are working with like-minded organizations, stakeholders like CVMA, like our counterparts in the US, the AKC, the National Animal Interest Alliance.
We're forming more alliances with these organizations. We're joining their committees and their projects. And we're committed to following that through. And that's something that we've been working on over the past year and a half. We've updated and provided a new position statement on the mass importation of dogs in Canada. We've just been more aware in terms of monitoring media and all the news that's out there from the local levels to the provincial to federal. We're very much following legislative changes, getting involved early on and to be seen as a key stakeholder. So this is something that we are really working on and doing and putting more efforts forward. So yes, we are.
Question from Sandra Nicholson, Alberta. Will CKC be committing to registering certain crossbreed dogs? If so, how will CKC promote the value of purebred dogs?
Leela may wish to comment, but I think the short answer is no. There are no plans to register mixed breed dogs.
Do you have other questions, Tara, that definitely need answering here or could be answered offline?
I do show that 38 are currently open. Some of them obviously can be handled offline, but that's up to you as the chair.
There was one here, didn't answer her question. Where do I send my motion since they will not be addressed here? You would have, if you want something changed, you would have to go through your either the rep for your discipline or your director to take something to the board. If you want to make motion, AGMs do not take motions. That's what I was trying to get through earlier. Linda, you had your hand up while I'm reading.
I was wondering if for the benefit of all members, we could maybe make a list of Q&As and make it public after that, because many questions are repeating or
yes, they are. Richard, you had your hand up while I'm reading.
Can all the questions that were submitted be included in the official minutes?
Yeah, I don't see why not. You know, as we do the addendums, as you know, we do the addendums to the things that are brought up. So I'm assuming that we will do the same, Lance?
Yeah, yes. On a similar note, I did quickly scan and saw several questions related to the status of priority dates and maybe between Sherry and Andrew, if there was some input on that, we could close those. There were several of them.
I think one of them was when will they be available, was it not? Sherry?
I'm sorry, I didn't see the question, but the priority dates they're being tested right now. I believe we're heading for having them out, you know, goes well with the testing by the end of October.
I have to say that we have gone over time, but normally when you meet in person, you don't have the opportunity to have so many questions. So sometimes we even leave early. This time we have gone over by about an hour, I think it is. But it's good that members are getting to put their questions in. And something that Tara said in an email to me this morning might have some validity, and that is getting these questions earlier if people send in questions so that we can go through them and sort them out. This is, Tara is doing a wonderful job. I am not complaining. She's doing a wonderful job, but trying to monitor as they're coming in is very difficult, and especially when they're coming in fast and furious. So if there are no other ones that are urgent, and I'm not trying to cut people off, please don't get that idea, but when you look at the time in other time zones, people have been on here for what, over 3.5 hours? It was set for 2.5, which gives us an idea for future, what time to schedule it, I think. And it does take time when you have the translation, and hey, that's fine, it happens on anything, but at least everybody is getting to hear the questions and hear the answers.
I think we should chalk it up as a learning experience to
very much so.
The format and make a commitment that the pending questions not addressed will be looked after one way or another.
John, I think it's also important to note that looking at the stats in the Q&A, there's been about 150 questions asked and answered. So it's quite an impressive sum. Typically at the AGMs, we might get a dozen, or
exactly.
maybe a
You're
dozen
right.
and a half. And so to all of those who have taken the time to submit their questions, excellent feedback, and the board definitely appreciates the time that the members have invested in the AGM. The fact that we have, say, roughly speaking, 150 plus questions, plus the emails, plus the text messages that Tara has been fielding, is just spectacular participation. So thank you.
I think it's been a great learning experience for all of us, knowing what to expect in the future. And it has given everybody from coast to coast the opportunity to bring in ideas, questions, comments. So on that note, I will thank everybody for coming or attending. I keep saying coming. We're so used to being in-person meetings, but thank you all so much. And your questions will be answered. Please don't think we're ignoring you. It's just a logistics scenario. And I'd like to call on Paul Oslich, who's going to make a motion. Mr. Oslich.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.